All right, welcome everyone. We are so excited. This is our very first free parent webinar. And as we mentioned in the emails, this Zoom room only holds 100 people, and everyone after 100 will have to go to our Facebook page to watch it live on Facebook, although technically it's like a 2-minute delay or a 1-minute delay. But we are so excited to be starting off our parent webinar series. So this is the first of several webinars that will happen between now and April, that we will be providing a focus just for parents, bringing in our national speakers, which also includes our current speaker today. We are so excited to have one of our own who is starting off the series for us. Dr. Patti Wood is Professor of Curriculum and Instruction and the Director of Gifted Education at Samford University. She obtained her doctorate at the University of Alabama in special education with emphasis in gifted education. She has served on the Executive Council of AAGC as president. Actually, she just stepped down as president. She served from 2018 to 2020 and has left big shoes to fill. She was the conference program.
They're little.
Right. But she left big imprints there and a legacy. She was the conference program chair from 2006 to 2018. She is affiliated not just with the Alabama Association for Gifted Children, but the National Association for Gifted Children, the Council for Exceptional Children, the World Gifted, ERA, and ASCD. She has presented papers at local, state, national, and international conferences. Her primary areas of research include reading instruction for gifted children, professional development for teachers, and differentiation for gifted learners. Her interests outside of gifted include organic gardening, reading, and travel. And I know it's going to be hard to tell, but her favorite color is purple. So without further ado, let's have a big welcome for Patti Wood, Dr. Wood.
Thank you, Shirley. I appreciate it so much. This is an exciting beginning series of webinars that AAGC is sponsoring, and I'm thrilled to get to be the one to kick it off. I go around the state and speak with teacher groups, and oftentimes I'm invited to speak with groups of parents of gifted children. So this is exciting for me, and I'm really thrilled to have all of you here. I know some of you are gifted education specialists, and my heart is with you and what you do with gifted children. But tonight I'm really going to be speaking to parents, and we're going to be recording this, or we are recording this. So gifted specialists, if you want to then share this with parents of your gifted children, then you'll be able to grab the video and provide the link to them. This first webinar we're offering free, but what we're trying to do in AAGC is build our parent membership in the organization. So future webinars will require that you be a member of AAGC. I believe the membership fee is $25, which is not too bad, and that's for a family. So we hope that you will come on board with us and be part of the only organization in the state dedicated to advocating for Alabama's gifted children. Okay, so the title of my presentation tonight is Understanding Your Gifted Child, Raising Happy and Successful Lifelong Learners. And I think that's what every parent has in their heart for their children. And tonight we're going to be addressing this in terms of your child who is gifted. You may have more than one gifted child in your family, but even if you just have one, what I talk about here, some of it can be applied to other children in your family as well. So when we think about gifted children, one of the things that comes to my mind in particular is that they are very complex individuals. and that they have a very wide range of characteristics and traits. Gifted children are as different a group as any group of children are. And what applies to one gifted child may or may not apply to another. So we have to realize that the characteristics can vary. This little word cloud here shows you all the different kinds of words that have been used to describe gifted children, gifted individuals. So, but you'll see the great big blue word gifted as being the key word in this word cloud. So gifted children love to learn. They think fast. They want to know how the world works. They have lots of questions going on. Gifted children oftentimes show unique creative strengths and abilities. They may have varying interests, but these interests oftentimes are remarkably keen, particularly in academic areas such as math or science or reading. There are some gifted children who are high level in every academic area, but then there are other gifted children who show very particular strengths in maybe just one area, like math or reading. So the idea that there's just one profile for gifted children is really erroneous, and we have to treat them all as each one as an individual, that they're not just a homogeneous group of children who are all the same. Gifted children can be talented in areas like problem solving. As I said before, they can be talented in creative areas, particularly areas of an artistic matter, visual and performing arts. But gifted children also can be bossy, moody, defiant, disruptive, uncooperative, and temperamental. Does that sound like any of your children? And certainly all children can display these kinds of behaviors or traits, but what we notice in gifted children is that they may be more extreme, or they may have higher levels of sensitivity or overreaction to things that happen to them. So there is a flip side to giftedness. While we see all the wonderful strengths and remarkable talents that gifted children can have, there can be a flip side. I want to call it negative because, you know, gifted children are what they are, as are all human beings. But this may be some of those traits or characteristics that make you stop and ponder, what do I do? How do I handle this? So things like having anxiety, being bored at school, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, experiencing depression or anger. Gifted children oftentimes have social issues, or may just become disengaged with what's happening in their school or even in the family. So to try to kind of give you a picture of the different way gifted children might present, I'm going to tell you about 4 different types. Now, I don't want you to think that every gifted child fits into just one of these. You may have a child who crosses between 2 or more of these 4 groups. But in general, we can say that these 4 types can be used to describe most gifted children. So the first group are these high achievers, and these are the children who are academically gifted, who love school, love school. They get up in the morning and can't wait to get to school. They hate when summer vacation comes because it's no school. They excel in one or more academic areas, and they just light up when they learn something new in school. And I think these are the gifted children that most people think of, the children who are really, really good at doing school. Schoolhouse gifted, sometimes we call them. But another kind of gifted child is the one who falls more under the category of what we call talented. These are those creative, artistic children, whether they are showing their talents in linguistic ways, such as in music, poetry, but then those who are also motorically talented in dance and drama, those who have the most unusual perception of visual arts and can can translate what they're thinking into beautiful visual pictures, or those who have a real knack for knowing how to design. So these children, you know, we try really hard when we're identifying gifted children to look at them in a broad way, but these sometimes are children who at second grade, we have a struggle identifying because we don't always give them opportunities to display these things in school, but they certainly are there. And some of these talents may take a while to bubble up to the surface where they are really recognizable. The next type of gifted child is the one who is a social leader. So these are kids who have those leadership traits, such as wonderful communication skills, highly motivated, have a really keen sense of social awareness. Now, our hope is that these children are using those traits, those talents, those gifts for good. But we do know that prisons are probably full of highly gifted, grown-up gifted children who are not using their social leadership skills in the best way. And then our fourth type of gifted child is the one that a lot of people struggle with because it's so hard to put your finger on them. These are those nonconformists. These are those gifted children who have very strong, passionate ideas and interests that may not coincide with what's going on in school. In fact, these children may very often become bored in school. They're not interested in academics. Maybe it's because they already know what's being taught, particularly in elementary school. Or it's just that the academics don't interest them because their special interests are beyond the school doorway. These are also those children who have had such a mismatch of what's happening in school with what they need that they are not motivated and could even become underachievers. We're not going to talk a lot about this evening, but hopefully in one of our future parent seminars, we'll have this as our main topic, because it is something that's very tragic to me, that the gifts and talents of some children would not be recognized or not be advanced so that they become underachievers. So while most people assume that superior intelligence or ability is the key to success, overemphasis on intellect or smartness, if you will, may cause your child to become dependent on that gifted label. We have to be, careful how we use the label, as you're going to see here, because that could lead to things like feelings of failure, fear of challenges, perfectionism, anxiety, low motivation, underachievement, as I mentioned before. All of this comes from the work of a really expert in the field, a psychologist, Carol Dweck. She is at Stanford University and has done research on this for about 30 years. And she's come to understand that labeling children as smart or gifted can oftentimes imprison or cripple them. When you think about feelings of failure, you can kind of understand where that's coming from. But sometimes children even fear being successful because their fear might lead them to, if I'm not successful in everything I do, then I must not be gifted. So I want you to think about this for a few minutes. If during the first years of school, your gifted child earns good grades and high praise without having to make much effort, what has your child not learned that most children learn by the time they reach middle school? So we're talking here about elementary grades, first, second, third, fourth. What if they're flying through, making all 100s, all A pluses, and everybody is complimenting them on how well they do, but they haven't had to put out much effort? What has your child not learned that other children have learned? Now, if we were together face to face, I would have you all share with me. You're certainly welcome to provide some answers here in the chat box of what you think that your child may not have learned.
We have
things like, I see that, not learning not to work hard, not learning how to fail and not give up. They're not learning some study skills. Thank you, Ashley. So all of those things are really important. Yes, thank you, Heather. Determination and grit are really important to help them become the learners that they're going to have to be once they get to middle school. And here are some of those key skills that are necessary for school success. Study skills being the top of the list, right? But other things like responsibility, persistence, determination, goal setting, time management. Think about this one, how to ask for help. I know a lot of gifted children that would never ask, because they're afraid that people will go, why don't you know you're gifted? Decision making, intrinsic motivation. And what that means is being motivated from within to do something as opposed to needing a reward or an incentive outside of themselves. So intrinsic motivation obviously then being the good thing, extrinsic motivation being something we want to get children away from. So some of these items on this list we call executive functioning. Things like time management, study skills, being organized, having self-determination, self-regulation. And these executive functions are really important. Without them, it really doesn't matter how gifted, how much cognitive strength a child has. Without these things, they may not get very far. And our December webinar for parents is going to be focused on this particular aspect of gifted children. Lisa Van Gemert is going to be presenting our webinar in December, and she's going to focus on what's known as executive function. Okay, so focusing on effort then, rather than intelligence, praising your child's persistence rather than how smart he or she is really what I'm trying to make a point about here. It's real hard for us not to say it. We get, as parents, we get into the habit of saying, oh, you're so smart, you're so clever, so that you're praising them for that kind of trait that they really don't have any control over because they are who they are. But persistence and effort are things children have to start applying and using themselves. So encouraging your child to work hard and to try things that are a challenge. A lot of gifted children don't want to do this because they are afraid of failing. They are afraid that if they can't do it, that maybe they aren't as gifted as everybody says. Maybe they aren't as smart. You didn't do that well, so you must not be as smart as what everybody has said you are. So we want to get them to take those risks, to take the challenge. And be careful as a parent not to rescue your child from challenging tasks or make excuses when he or she struggles or fails. It's through those struggles and those failures that we all learn. If a child makes a 100 A+ on a test, I would venture to say to you that they already knew it before they took the test, so they really didn't learn anything new. And we want to make sure our kids are learning something new every day, not just maybe one thing, but lots of new things every single day. So don't make an excuse if they're struggling, and don't just jump right in. Encourage them to try to figure it out. Use what they have in their head to figure out and problem solve. Try to be very happy when they do figure it out and show them that. Applaud them for sticking with it. Applaud their grit and determination and persistence and taking a risk. What I see a lot of times is middle school students don't want to take some of the advanced academic courses, and this may even happen into high school because either they're afraid it's going to ruin their grade point average, or it's going to be just too hard and they don't want to work that hard. So don't let them off the hook. Make sure they are entering into academics where there's going to be some challenge, that it's not just more of the same and easy things to do. So encourage your child's special interests and talents. Every child has something or more than something sometimes that they're really interested in and passionate about. Some of these things may be school related and some may not be. So whatever your child's interests and talents are, really encourage them. You as their parent may be able to give them some information and training, but it might be that you have to find someone who is a professional, who's more experienced, and for whom they could add to your child's and build to their talent that's already there. Get your kid off the couch, get them outside, get them off the screen, get them moving. It's very important that we build a generation of kids who are not glued to their screens. And I know right now that that's a really, really difficult thing to do if your child is having to have school done virtually. But don't let them on that, don't keep them on that screen for too long. I really think young brains need other avenues, not just a visual screen in front of them. But be careful that you don't overschedule your children. When my children were young, they were each allowed one something. So like my daughter did gymnastics and my son did karate. And then in addition to some of the family things that we did, this kept their schedules in control. I've known families where a child would do something every single night of the week, and that can really lead to burnout. So be careful of that, even if your child wants it. Just be careful of how much you have them involved in. Parenting your gifted child can be a tough job. There's no doubt about it. So I'm going to talk for just a few minutes about keys to successful parenting. And again, what I'm talking about here can be applied to parenting all children. But since we're talking about gifted children tonight, think about these tips in relation to your gifted child or children. So you want to develop a sense of belonging within your family. If you have a number of children and maybe only one or two of them have been labeled gifted, they may either feel like they are not a part of the family, or they may have tried to take over the central role within your family. We want them to have a sense of belonging, but at the same time, we don't want everything in the family to revolve around your gifted child or gifted children. You want to nurture resilience. Everybody knows what that word means. And right now we are having a time of where resilience is going to be so important. But we've got to let our gifted children experience things that are difficult so that they will fail. And I know that sounds hurtful, but if you don't teach them how to fail and bounce back, down the road when it happens and it's a real severe failure, they're not going to know how to deal with it or cope with it. So be careful that you are not a helicopter parent hovering over, or a lawnmower parent trying to clear the way for your child. Let them stumble and fall a bit. They need to figure out how to get over the bumps and pick themselves up. You need to accept and appreciate your child's uniqueness. Of course, every child is unique and every child is special. Your gifted child is going to be dealing with some pretty monumental things in his or her life. And so appreciating the differences that your gifted child has and the uniqueness there. Some gifted children are a little hard to deal with. So, you know, that's another really important point. And then on the flip side, helping your child to accept and appreciate him or herself. As they get older and they struggle with social interactions, social isolation may become a part of their life. They may experience some bullying, which is just trauma to my thinking, but helping them to like who they are. And this is the wonderful thing about your child being in a gifted education program. Gifted specialists are so in tune with gifted children and their social emotional needs. a lot of what happens in a gifted pullout program is to help your child with those kinds of things, those affective issues, the social emotional issues that sometimes a general education teacher doesn't really understand how to be helpful in. And so you should be really thankful and happy that your child will have that safe haven, that place where he or she can be who they are and learn more about themselves. You as a parent have a huge role in teaching your child things like self-motivation, self-discipline, and self-management. Yes, schools help with that, but there's nothing like the family as being the first beginning point where those self-regulation and executive function skills are taught. So we all want to make sure that our children feel good and feel good about themselves. And so one of the first things that we think will do that is to praise them. And I'm not saying that praise is not a good thing, but we have to know how to praise in a good way that's going to lead to healthy sense of self-concept. So praising what your child does, saying that they've been a good worker or that their work was creative, they were creatively thinking, or that they did something with kindness. Those are really better words to use for praising rather than saying that they are brilliant or they're a genius or they're so smart or they're the best. So just start looking at how you can change your vocabulary when you are praising your child. And don't praise them for every single accomplishment, every drawing, every A+ test. Then they're going to become dependent on that. Moderate praise is good. It will empower your child to feel confident and to love learning, but extreme praise will enslave them to pressures to continue to perform in ways that they're going to get more praise. And whether it's from you or a teacher, we want them to not feel that dependence on that. Because what can happen is a child will start developing a sense of needing to be perfect. A child who is admired as being perfect may become trapped in that perfectionism. So be careful that you don't imprison your child in that kind of thinking. Now, a lot of gifted children put perfectionism on themselves. They've set the bar and they work really hard to stay right up there, but as they progress through school, they're going to find more and more challenges that cause them to have to work harder. And the perfectionism that they have could move from being a healthy kind of perfectionism that leads to excellence to an unhealthy kind that could lead to neurotic kinds of behaviors, even things, as bad as self-harm. So we just want to be very careful of how we're using our praise. Perfectionism is another topic we're going to have at one of our future webinars because I think it is one that can really cripple a lot of gifted children. So you as the parent are in control of your home. You have to be careful that your gifted child doesn't take over, which I'm sure some of you have seen a little of that already in your home. But you are the parent, you're the adult, you're the one with the experience, and you have to make sure that your gifted child does what your expectations are for all the children in your family. So here are 7 tips for maintaining control and to maybe keep you from going into that process of argumentation to try to get your gifted child to do what you want. So the first one is, and these stand true for all children. So making the rules clear. Have you set clear rules in your family? Realistic rules, depending on the age and the developmental level of your child. Make those rules clear. If you have to write them down, post them. That's good. Certainly teachers post rules in their classrooms and expect them to be followed. On the heels of that one, make the consequences for breaking the rules clear. Don't come up with new consequences on the fly. Set those, write them down if need be, so that children will know what's going to happen when they break the rule. don't negotiate those consequences after a rule is broken. If what you said is no screen time for the rest of the night, stick with it. Don't let your child, your gifted child, negotiate, because they can definitely make a case for it. Don't argue back. You are the parent, you are the adult. But if your child does continue to argue, then it's your right to increase those consequences. But be consistent and follow through. If you say they've got a consequence, make sure it happens. Otherwise, they know they can get around it. But always make the consequences reasonable and enforceable. If you can't enforce them, then there's very little reason to have one. So these tips, these 7 tips, work really well when children are young. But you also can use them if things have gotten out of control and you're ready to take it back. These can even work with older children, but as with a lot of things, consistency is the key. If you give in and argue, you basically will have to go back to square one. So yes, enjoy your child, your gifted child who has remarkable reasoning skills, but don't let your child or his amazing abilities control your family life. So we're going to go now to the aspect of my presentation that I really want to bring you into, because it's advocacy. You stand as your child's strongest advocate for whatever your child needs, whether it's in education, in a medical issue, sports, anything. You are your child's first and best advocate. So I've got a bulleted list of some things here that apply to your being your child's advocate when you are faced with discussions at school. I know we all go at the beginning of the school year to open house, and we get to meet the teacher and learn a little bit about how the things are going to run in the classroom. And then at some point in time, there were scheduled conferences, parent-teacher conferences. So you need to be ready for that, read and do your research. If there are things about your child that you think are either not being addressed or things that are concerning you about what's happening at school, be sure you have the information that you need. Sometimes parents get notes home from teachers and there's sort of a knee-jerk reaction from something that your child might have done or not done. And you tend to want to just kind of lash out. So be very measured in your response. Go to those conferences well prepared, and always start off with a positive attitude so that you can work with your teacher, your child's teacher, collaboratively as a partner, listening to what the teacher has to say, not being confrontational and being very tactful in talking to your child's teacher. If the teacher says something you're not understanding, maybe she's using some words about what happens in the classroom that you don't really know what it means, ask for clarification, again, in a non-confrontational way, but always ask questions that go to the heart of what the issues are, and ask questions that will help the teacher share with you what he or she is seeing. What are my child's strengths? And then what are my child's weaknesses? Every human being has strengths and weaknesses. What are the goals for your child? If your child is gifted, your child may already know a lot of what's being taught in one or more of the content areas. So what are the teacher's goals? If the goal is just, to maintain where they are, that's really not good enough in my mind. Every child, as I said before, needs to learn something new every single day. And if they're making all A+ 100s, don't think that's a good thing. It might look good, but it also tells us your child's not being challenged and your child needs to be. If there are problems, what can I do to help? And then you have to be ready to compromise on some things. If you can go in with a positive attitude and make the case for anything that you might be concerned about, the teacher will be very respectful of and be appreciative. So the two of you working together is really the best thing. So the Alabama Association for Gifted Children, AAGC, is, as I've said before, an advocacy group. We are a group of teachers, parents, administrators, community individuals whose goal is to see that Alabama's gifted children get the appropriate education that they deserve. So every year in January, we have what's called Gifted Education Month, or GEM. And it's during this month that there will be a lot of activities focusing on gifted education. Every year, one of the things that AAGC does is sponsor a huge billboard that's located on Heron Street in Montgomery. This is a street that legislators have, a lot of them have to travel down to get to the State House, where they're going to be going into legislative session in the spring. This is the time that they develop the Education Trust Fund budget for the upcoming year. And we, as advocates for gifted children, want to make sure that gifted children's needs are being met and that they are addressed in this education budget for the upcoming year. So we always put this billboard up so that they will see it. And it's just part of our whole campaign. But this is something that stays up for a couple of months. We usually put it up in January and it stays up through February. But it's a delightfully bold billboard. And I've had a number of legislators comment to us about seeing it every year. And we change it up a little bit every year. This was actually, I think this was 2019's billboard. I don't think this was 2020, but the words on it are pretty much the same. We just sort of changed the graphic of the kids. So gifted education in Alabama is a mandate. It's a law. Gifted children have to be identified, and then their needs have to be met. But in our mind, it's an unfunded mandate, at least from the state. The state law requires that all districts identify and provide the services for gifted children and youth. But the teacher education units, the gifted specialist who is working with your child, is being paid for out of local school budgets as opposed to from the state level, which means, and this has happened a number of times, when the finances are not strong and we go into what's called proration, oftentimes gifted ed units are cut, or as someone leaves, they may not refill that position. So we have tried for the last, oh gosh, as long as I've been around, 20 years, to get funding at the state level so that it is there permanently and districts don't have to rely on their own local funding to pay for the teacher units for gifted ed. I want you to see this, and I think numbers speak volumes, and to me, data are important if you're trying to make a case for, in this case, increasing gifted funding. So what I did was I compiled the funding amounts from states around Alabama. Now, these numbers are in millions of dollars. So for instance, Georgia, one of our nearest neighbors, funds gifted education to the tune of $302 million. Now we know Georgia has a lottery. They spend their lottery money on education. And so gifted ed gets a good chunk of it. I'm gonna skip over to Mississippi. Mississippi has a law to fund gifted education from the state, and they fund teacher units. They fund at, when these numbers were written, 42 million, which covers the number of teacher units that are needed to teach all of the gifted kids in the state. Florida, 267 million, South Carolina, 26 million, Arkansas, 35 million, Texas, 157 million. But as you see in the red circle there, when these numbers were acquired, I think this is 2015, Alabama was 1.5 million. We have been able to acquire some additional increase in our line item. We are up to, this past year, we were up to 3.825 million, which is astounding, and we're so thrilled. But when this money is then sprinkled out amongst all of the school districts in the state, in most cases, it's not enough to fund the additional teacher units that are needed. Those monies end up being used for program services, for professional development, for gifted specialists, field trips, things that the gifted specialist needs to run a successful gifted ed program. But I think these numbers are pretty astounding, and it shows you how far behind everybody else. We used to say, thank goodness for Mississippi, and we really can't say that anymore for gifted. Again, here are the numbers from the most recent approved education trust fund budget. So this is for 2021. Gifted ed, as I said just a minute ago, the line item is $3,825,000. Some of the other items in our state budget for education, prison ed is $13,533,000. ELL, which is English language learners, is $14 million. Distance learning, $20 million. AMSTI, which is the Math, Science, Technology Initiative, is $30 million. ARI, which is the Reading Initiative, is $78 million. And pre-K programs really got a big boost this year to $132 million. Now, I'm not saying that any of these different programs don't deserve the money. I mean, I know they do. And gifted children will benefit from a number of these things. Some gifted children are English language learners. All gifted children are going to be benefiting from distance learning. The AMSTI and ARI programs certainly could benefit some gifted children. And by having good, strong pre-K programs, we may be able to strengthen children who come from poverty, who are not getting experiences that they need, but by coming to school earlier, this will help them on their road. But the gifted ed program teacher units are funded locally. The $3 million that you see here is really not near enough, and I'll give you the full amount in just a few minutes. So how will full funding for gifted education help Alabama? So this is the argument that we brought before the Ways and Means Committee of the state legislature. Well, every year we bring this forward to them, but the first thing is that by having more gifted education specialists, more individuals who are trained with how to meet the needs of gifted children, it will help raise achievement. And schools are all about that, as we all know. It also may decrease the number of students going to other states. You know, if you have a gifted child and you look at the fact that Georgia or Texas have much more funding and much better resources for gifted kids, you may decide to leave Alabama and go there. A lot of gifted children leave public schools and become either go to private schools or their parents choose to homeschool them. Now with more virtual learning options, that may become even more prevalent, but it's hard to know right now. The next bullet, decreased dropouts from the gifted population. There's a really staggering statistic nationwide that up to about 40% of high school dropouts are gifted children, gifted teenagers. And that's really astounding, and it's really very sad. But I think a lot of gifted kids hate school. They start hating school maybe about 4th or 5th grade. And it just goes downhill from there. And they're just waiting for the time that they can leave school legally. So that's a very sad thing to hear. Full funding for gifted education in Alabama is going to help Alabama in lots of ways. And when we look down the road, it can help increase our leadership potential in our state. It also can help with the increase in job creations, because we could bring in more businesses and more entrepreneurial opportunities. And it also can help enhance innovation and creativity. Instead of our gifted kids going to other states and putting their gifted strengths in other states' endeavors, we can keep them in Alabama if they feel that Alabama has something to offer them. You think about gifted children, where are they going to want to raise their children? Are they going to want to stay in Alabama where they didn't feel like they got a good education? Or are they going to want to go to other states where they know education is a top priority? So full funding will keep us from squandering a natural resource, and that's Alabama's best minds. And I just want to make a comment here. The state legislators that we've met with and taught with have been awesome. They have been so supportive, and they've really come to understand the importance of this. But there are a lot of individuals in the state legislature, and it's really impossible for us to get to all of them, which is one of the reasons why we are pleading with you parents from around the state to talk to your local legislators and to tell them what you know about gifted children's needs and help them to understand the importance of fully funding gifted education. Yes, we are thankful that we have a line item. It is awesome. Every gifted specialist will tell you it has made a huge difference in being able to purchase materials and resources and to go to conferences and learn more about how to help their gifted children. But we need to spread the message further than just the small number that the Alabama Association for Gifted task force has been able to get to. So our recommendation has always been we want full funding for gifted education in grades pre-K through 12. We want every child to get what he or she needs. A child is born gifted. They don't just become gifted when they hit second grade, which is when we do second grade child find. A preschooler can easily be identified as being advanced. We want to make sure that we continue our program for universal screening and assessment for gifted identification. And we want to make sure that our teachers, both gifted education specialists, as well as classroom teachers, administrators, and to-be teachers who are in higher ed now get the training they need to understand gifted education. So with over 62,000 students identified as gifted in Alabama, we need about 1,050 teachers. Now this will vary, and we do have a formula for knowing how many teachers it needs to be, but that's about what we need. So to fully fund these teacher units will be about $65 million. And that sounds like a lot, but when you put that up against some of the other expenditures, I don't think it's out of line. However, the state legislators have always felt that number was really not achievable. So we're making tiny baby steps, but hopefully one day we'll get there. So just to leave you all with some resources, there are 4 websites that you can go to learn more about gifted children, their nature, their needs, what you as a parent can do, things that you can use as a parent in your home. The first one here is the National Association for Gifted Children, AAGC. The AAGC organization is an affiliate of NAGC. So there's our website. Just remember that one, put it in your brain, alabamagifted.org, and you can go and find just a wealth of information there. There's also a site called Hoagie's Gifted that is kind of all things gifted. On this site, the lady who runs it, her son was gifted, and she kind of started it to make sure parents had resources they needed. So it's also a good place you can go and find interesting ideas about gifted. And then the last one here is Sing, and that is the gifted organization that really looks more at the emotional needs of gifted children, making sure that those needs are as much a priority as a gifted child's academic needs. So Alabama Gifted Association needs you. We need you to be advocates for your child and for all gifted children. So to attend our upcoming parent webinars, we need for you to join AAGC. So you can go to our website and get more information. Our next webinar will be Tuesday, December 1st at 6:30 with our guest speaker, Lisa Van Gammert. Lisa has done a lot of presentations for our organization at conferences, and she was a presenter at one of our teacher webinars this year. Lisa is affectionately known as the Gifted Guru. She's written a number of books and she's just delightful. So I think you're going to really enjoy hearing from her. She's going to be talking about strategies to help gifted students with time management and organizational skills, self-regulation, and other skills that will help improve your children's lives at school and at home. And again, we call this executive functioning, kind of a strange word, but if you want to go look that up, you can find out more about it. We have a number of social media links here. You can see our website is, again, alabamagifted.org. We have an email address. We also have a Facebook page. We have a group. And then we have Twitter as well. We are actually tonight presenting this through both our Zoom presentation, but we also have an active Facebook page for the overflow from anyone who couldn't get into this Zoom. So I'm going to stop now and ask if there are any questions. I'm going to turn it over to Shirley and see if she'd like to help answer, or I'm happy to also. I just need to open my chat box. And I wish I'd been reading this all along because I'm seeing some great comments here. Yeah, Erin, yes, Lisa is wonderful. Y'all are going to love hearing her.
So Patti, we had a question from Brunessa Lindman, and I hope I said your name correctly. She wanted to know, how do we prevent our child from making excuses?
Okay, well, all kids will make excuses for either why they didn't do something or why they didn't do it right. You know, I think kids have to own it. I think you have to you know, get them to own what it is that they are making an excuse for, whether it's not doing their homework or, you know, not bringing their books home that they need. You know, I guess it depends on what the excuse is about. But it's just like what I was saying with when you break a rule and there's a consequence. You have to be consistent in how you respond to it. And you have to decide how you're going to respond to it in the first place. But, you know, it's kind of a human trait. If you do something wrong, you're going to try to get out of it, wiggle out of it, make an excuse. So I think that you have to set those ground rules and not accept the excuses. And there would have to be a consequence, I think, for a child trying to use an excuse to get around doing something or get around, you know, not wanting to take the blame for something they've done. That's probably not a really good answer, but really it's one of those parenting things that would apply to any child. Gifted kids just know how to work the system. They are really good at manipulating because their brains work so amazingly. I mean, they can think of things that you would not even think they knew about. I've seen little 5-year-olds argue up one side and down the other. So that's the thing that's tough. And a lot of parents think, oh, my kid is so much smarter than me, but you're the parent. And that's what you've got to always remember, regardless of where their IQ score is, if you even want to think about that. And maybe in a future webinar, we'll talk a little bit more about all of that, their amazing cognitive abilities and those kinds of things that you might want more information about. But thank you for your question. It's a great question.
We have Arena Walker with a question. She says, my child doesn't want to be in specials. How do I encourage him?
So yeah, I know in some schools that gifted is considered a special. See, I think that's crazy. Gifted is what your child needs. I don't think it's a special. Special to me is like art or music, but you know, your child is going to gain some things by going to the gifted pull-out class that they won't even realize they're gaining. And so you as the parent, you need to really encourage them to be there because they're with a group of peers who are more like them. There's more similarities there. And it's the best place for them to learn from others. Most gifted children aren't going to learn a lot from the kids who are more typical age peers. They're going to learn more from their similar ability peers. And so they need those conversations. I know when I was teaching gifted children, I had some parents come to me and say, their child wanted to drop out, and I would do my best to, try to convince them and the child to stay for a while. Maybe you're just not understanding right now what this is supposed to be. Give it a little longer. And that's what I would encourage. But, ultimately you as the parent, it's your decision. You have to sign the permission for your child to be gifted. And if you, don't want them there, or it's causing too much anguish, it's your decision. But Shirley, what would you say about this? You've come across this a lot. You taught gifted children for years. What would you say?
Patti, I'm so sorry. I've been monitoring everything else. I did not hear what you
Okay,
just said.
that's fine.
I apologize.
She was saying if the child doesn't want to go to specials and gifted is one of those, what do you do about it?
Well, you're the parent, the adult, and you know that the child's going to benefit from it. And given time, the child's going to see that as well.
That's what I think. Yeah. Sometimes time takes care of it. But right now, everything is crazy in school. Your child may not be getting a lot of gifted pullout right now. Things may not be how they were last year, or maybe your child's in third grade and doesn't really know any difference because this is just the beginning of your child's experience. And of course, every school district does gifted pullout just a little bit different. The state has a mandate for services, but every district has its own plan. So they're all a little bit different. But I just think you're the parent and you know what your child needs. And I think you just have to kind of stick with it. If you don't, then you're letting your child make decisions that he or she is really not maturationally ready to make. That may not have helped any. That's how I would approach it.
Patti, we have another question.
Okay.
I know it's not the full name, so I'm not even going to say it. It's my eldest is in IB, and they have counselors at school to help the kids deal with social emotional problems. Is it pretty common for gifted kids to struggle with these types of issues?
Oh, absolutely. When we look at gifted kids' needs, we look at their academic needs and then their social, emotional, or affective needs. And sometimes the social, emotional issues, problems, things they're struggling with will be so pronounced that it impacts and affects their academics or their social interactions. So it's very, very common. Very few counselors, I'll just have to say this, have been trained to know what to do with gifted children. All children have social emotional issues or concerns or needs. It's not just gifted children. But as I said before, gifted kids feel things more intensely. Their reaction to things may be over the top, extreme. And because they internalize things so much more and their mind is thinking abstractly and they're thinking way ahead, it really is a challenge. So, and I think counselors are able to work with children about social emotional needs. I'm not saying that they can't, but gifted children's profiles are a little different. And so I wish that counselors had to take some courses in gifted ed, but that's not mandated. And maybe I didn't really answer your question there, but it is common for gifted children, and particularly as they become middle schoolers and into high school, to struggle more with their giftedness and how to respond to what's going on around them, particularly in school and with their peers. So Ashley King, I see a question on parents of twins with one gifted and one is not. What would I say? Each child is unique, and I think that parents know the uniqueness of each of their children, and you don't want to ignore one child in favor of the other. I've seen a gifted child be ignored because he or she is so unlike everybody else in the family. I've also seen a gifted child be put on a pedestal because look at this, look at what your brother or your sister has done, So I think you have to have a really strong balance there, and that you recognize and make sure you are attending to the needs of the two twins equally. Sometimes you may have to have an individual conversation with one to make sure that one understands the other. Twins tend to have a strong bond, particularly that comes out of when they're young and before they get to school, but then that can definitely change as they grow older. I had a gifted child in my program when I was teaching who had a twin, and her twin sister had some birth issues and she had to be retained a year. And so you've got, real difference there, two twins in two different grades. So, it's tough, but it's so interesting because the one that had to be retained, she ended up going to college and the other one didn't because some social emotional issues she had. So, giftedness does not crown you with success. Some gifted children struggle so much that it's hard for them to get beyond what their giftedness is. I've seen a lot of gifted children drop out of college because they just couldn't handle the stress and the things that are going on there. So we've got suggestions to handle social and emotional issues caused by COVID. I'm suffering. I know all of you are too, all of you adults. What are you doing to handle it? You need time out, time away from screens, get outside, talk about what's bothering you, find find a peer that you can talk to and do things with. I think talking about it is a really big deal. Okay. Sorry, Shirley. It's 7:31. We'll take one more question and then I guess we have to stop.
Yes, we've had a question on Facebook. They want best resources for children who struggle with social interaction and emotional sensitivity. Resources that provide helpful strategies and talking points for parents. She doesn't know how to navigate these waters.
Oh, okay. Well, that really is important. And that, frankly, is exactly what we are intending these webinars to be about, to help you parent your gifted child. We are concerned about academics, but that's not your concern. Your concern is how to parent them. And so that's what these webinars are going to be for. Those resources that I pointed you toward, the National Association for Gifted Children, Alabama Association for Gifted Children. Let me go back a slide. Hoagie's Gifted and Sing all have wonderful resources for parents. My suggestion is go there and start reading and learning what you can so that you can figure out what it is that's going on with your child that you need to try to help. Now, some gifted children need counseling. I'll just say that. One of my favorite people and a good friend of mine, Sylvia Rim, is a psychologist whose entire practice focuses on gifted children because of such a great need. She told me not long ago that anxiety is one of the greatest issues right now with gifted children. And I would say with COVID, all children may be having anxious moments, but gifted children, like I said before, overreact, over-internalize, and are hyper sensitive to things that cause anxiety. So that would be my answer to that one. So we want to thank you all for being here this evening. We hope that you will join AAGC so that you can continue learning along with us, learning how to parent your gifted child, and you certainly will learn things about parenting any child, but we're really focused on those children who think and operate at a higher, more abstract level because their responses to life and the world around them are quite different from their age peers. But thank you again for being here. And if you have any questions, you can always go on to the Facebook page and ask those, or use the email address here and send us an email, and we'll have one of the people on our board to answer you back. But thank you again, and everybody have a great evening. Bye-bye.
And Patti, Dr. Wood, thank you very much for presenting our first webinar for parents. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.